The paddock is quiet as the teams prepare for their return to the land down under, but F1 Brake Check is making noise as we get ready for the Australian Grand Prix 2024. Corey and I are back to talk about the latest news. We'll play Stump the Pundit, and we'll preview the upcoming action from Albert Park. So crack open a Foster's, throw a shrimp on the Barbie, and settle back. F1 Brake Check is Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. Oi, oi, oi.
Welcome. You are listening to F1 Brake Check, the epic podcast for all things Formula One, where we discuss technology, history, news, and perspective. With your hosts, Scott Vick and Corey Broom.
F1 Brake Check is back in action. With me, as always, is my intrepid co-host, Corey Broom. Corey, how are you doing this week, sir?
Fantastic. We had our monthly get-together on Friday. Had a great cigar. It was a Crux. Really good smoke. Love that cigar. Industrial, our birthplace, so to speak. It has changed things up, and now are actually offering food. It was pretty good.
I thought it was quite good.
Yeah.
So, especially being their quote-unquote soft opening and everything,
Right.
I thought that it was quite tasty. As we've talked about before, though, literally the only complaint that I have is I just wish that they would also start carrying more of the quote-unquote established brands, because most of the stuff that they do carry are smaller boutique brands and somewhat newer brands. I would really love to see them start carrying more of like the older, like Partagas and Macanudo and Cohiba and things like that, but all in due time.
Yeah, right.
All right, so let's jump into our news. There's not a ton of news this week, but first, the continued Christian Horner saga at Red Bull. So first, we got the news that the individual who had brought the allegations against Christian Horner had been suspended with pay from their position at Red Bull. And you and I talked about this a little bit offline, but I wanted to talk a little bit more with additional news that the individual exercised their right to appeal the decision from Red Bull. So first off, the suspension. So as you and I talked about, is that the individual being suspended basically tells you that the investigation found that she either made it up or they greatly exaggerated the events as they happened. So first of all, your thoughts on that, on the suspension?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a tricky one, right? Because Red Bull has to be very diligent about how they go about and how they process. So if they were to put somebody on leave, even with pay on leave, that has accused a higher up, a boss, of misconduct, and that really happened, then that person, at least here in the States, they would basically own Red Bull at the end. I mean, they would have just about every single lawyer in the US asking to take that case.
The individual was suspended after the investigation was completed, after Christian was cleared of all wrongdoing, does lead me to believe that Red Bull feels that she either fabricated or greatly exaggerated events. As we talked about, the thing is that a lot of times in these cases, when one person comes out and does this, then that takes and emboldens other individuals to do the same. And it gives them the power and the bravery to, before somebody else came out, they were afraid to, and now they come out.
Where they used to be very afraid of what's going to happen to me. Am I going to lose my job? Now they see I'm not going to lose my job, and I can get this person convicted or whatever the case may be. You're exactly right. It gives people a lot more confidence to come out.
But having said that, nobody else has come out. The fact that Red Bull didn't sweep it underneath the carpet, they were more than willing to come out and say, hey, we're investigating this. We're going to bring in this highly rated, highly respected independent counsel to come in and do this investigation. And the fact that after the council did all of the work, did all of the investigation, and they came back and said, no, Christian didn't break any rules. He's cleared. They said that the individual had the right to appeal. That individual has exercised their right to appeal. So moving on. So did you see Helmut Marko's warning shot to Ricardo after the events of Saudi Arabia?
No, I did not.
one of the news outlets asked Helmut for his thoughts on Ricardo after his pretty lackluster performance in the
We've
first
been
two
saying it for a
races of
while.
this year.
Yeah.
And Helmut basically raised the flag saying he needs to pull out something soon. I'm paraphrasing here. I don't remember what his exact phrase was that he used, but he basically said he needs to pull something together and he needs to do it right fast. Like we discussed about quite a bit in last week's podcast when we recapped the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix, we were both very critical of Ricardo's performance so far to this point in the season. You feel like that he may not have it anymore. I feel like he's lost the confidence. He needs to hurry up and find that confidence again real quick, or he's going to find himself on the outside. So what are your thoughts on it?
If you look at him historically, I understanding that he didn't have the greatest car at McLaren, but still, Norris was readily beating him, and he was supposed to be lead. He was always where he is now. He was in the lower tier, back of the grid every single time, and that's exactly where we see him this time. The problem with Ricardo is he does have these outlier races where he's just phenomenal. He's up there in points.
Gave McLaren their first win in over a
Yeah,
decade.
he looks fantastic, but then he slides back and he's just not where he needs to be. So, is F1 really the place for Ricardo now? To me, it doesn't really seem like it. I would say he has less time than Silverstone.
Yeah,
Like
I would say so,
did.
especially with Helmut's, recent
Oh,
remarks.
Yeah. Yep.
They've got a very highly rated driver waiting in the wings in Lawson, and they are going to be keen on getting him into a seat sooner rather than later, because I guarantee you, after his phenomenal outings at the end of last season, they're going to be very keen to keep this kid on the payroll, and they don't want to lose him to somebody else just simply because they don't have a seat available for him. They're going to try to find a way to get him into a seat at some point sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
All right. So did you see the news about Felipe Massa's lawsuit against F1 and against Bernie Ecclestone?
No.
Okay. So little history lesson here. In 2008, we'd actually talked a little bit about this, but not how it impacted Massa, but we had talked about the quote unquote crash gate incident at the Singapore Grand Prix in 2008, where Nelson Piquet was basically given a coded signal and told to crash into the barrier in order to bring out a safety car so that way Fernando Alonso could retain the win. The way that the rest of the season shook out is it led to Lewis Hamilton winning his first F1 drivers championship, and he won it by a single point over Felipe Massa. In 2009 was when the investigation commenced, and it was found that Nelson Piquet Jr. had intentionally crashed the car, and it was determined that starting from the very top level with Briatore all the way down through most of the senior management, they were all aware of what went down and the fact that the crash was deliberate in order to give Alonso the win. Now, Felipe Massa has come forward and said no, because of an interview that Bernie gave last year. The FIA and F1 actually kind of knew towards the late part of 2008 that they already had the evidence that Renault had executed this order and had intentionally crashed the car in order to preserve the win for Alonso. In a nutshell, Massa is now saying that because of the crash and he pitted under the safety car, despite the fact that he left the pit too quickly and actually tore off his fuel hose, because this was back still in the days when they still had refueling in Formula One, he actually left the pit box too quickly and actually tore the hose off. So he ends up finishing 13th and out of the points in that race. But he claims now that because F1 didn't investigate the incident early enough in 2008, instead waited till 2009 by handing the title to Hamilton and denying Massa the title. But he now says that because of that, he should have been awarded the title. Even if they vacated Alonso's win, that still doesn't promote him up high enough in order to get the 1 point that he needed in order to tie Hamilton and ultimately win the title. So I don't quite understand how he thinks that this is going to give him the title. So your thoughts?
It's like a hope and a dream type of an argument.
Okay.
I'm running out of money. Let's hope and pray that this works.
Yeah, he claims that he should have been awarded the title and that it's cost him tens of millions of dollars, things like sponsorship and
Sure.
appearance fees and things like that, and the money that he would have gotten for winning the drivers' championship from Ferrari. I think it's just still a matter of sour grapes because the fact that he lost by 1 point in the final standings. All right. So, one more time, we got to talk about Ollie Berman and his incredible debut. So, couple things that have come out since the last time we talked after the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. So before the race, he received a number of encouraging texts and phone calls and stuff from not just current drivers like Lewis Hamilton and fellow countrymen like Lando Norris and George Russell, but he also even received a encouraging text from Sebastian Vettel, who
Cool.
Ollie has never made any secret about how much he admired Vettel as he was coming up as a racing driver, and that for him to get the encouragement from Vettel, former Ferrari driver, who, even though he hasn't been in a car for a couple of years, he still knows a lot about the inner workings of Ferrari and everything, and he was able to provide advice and encouragement for Berman ahead of the race. So I know you and I are both huge Sebastian Vettel fans. So your thoughts on, first of all, on all the encouragement and the fact that the drivers were all so willing to work with Berman ahead of his debut.
Oh yeah. I mean, Seb Vettel is he's a class act, once in a lifetime type of person. You know, he's just on track and off track. I've said it many times. You've said it many times. I miss seeing that man drive. So, but you know, even with that, I love to see how encouraging other drivers are, bringing up younger drivers up into the ranks. It's just really encouraging. I love to see the camaraderie that everybody has and that they're willing to help out, because in a lot of sports, professionally or professionally, you don't really help out people coming up. There's rare instances of that happening, but for the most part, it was a hard fight for me to get here. It's going to be a hard fight for you to get here.
One of the things that I love to see right now is you see it like on the telecasts and stuff, clips of the drivers as they're walking through the paddock. Fans and everything are able to just to come up as they're walking through, and they're more than willing to take the selfies. And so one of the other things though too about Berman that I wanted to talk about was, in addition to all of the encouragement and work, Lewis Hamilton, after trying to chase him down, unsuccessfully trying to chase him down during the race, on the cool down lap as he's driving by from the cockpit, he's given Ollie thumbs up saying, "Hey, you did a great job." Gave him a big old bear hug when Berman finally got into Parc Fermé. One of the other things that I thought was really interesting and really telling was Sainz, one day after his operation for appendicitis, was already back at the track. Well, it came out this week that Sainz was actually in the garage during the race, and he was watching the telemetry, and he was feeding information to Ollie's engineer so that the engineer could relay information and data better to Ollie to help him better understand what he needed to be doing while he was out on track. First of all, it was amazing the fact that Carlos, after only one day, first of all, that just goes to show the amazing advances in medical science and the fact that once upon a time, appendicitis was 2-3 days in the hospital.
That just shows you what kind of person, not just driver, but person that Sainz is.
All right. So last thing we got to talk about is there is a video that surfaced this week of a 13-year-old Zach Brown, who later in life went on to become CEO of McLaren. He appeared on a US game show called Wheel of Fortune. And the video from that just recently surfaced, and I sent the video to you. And so your thoughts first about the video.
You see this teenager on screen, and there's so many kids now that would be intimidated by the spotlight, being on camera, especially in front of all these people. 13 years old, and this kid is out here acting like he's been doing this all his life. It was like no big deal, just talking like, hey, No big deal. It was
Yeah,
amazing.
he was cutting up, and
Yeah.
when he was talking to the host, he was cutting up with him,
Yep.
joking around and everything. He seemed perfectly comfortable in doing that, which is it's amazing. Now, one of the telling things about that video is if you watch the video as he's talking to Pat Sajak, the presenter, Zach at the time had aspirations of playing professional baseball. The thing is that he said, yes, I have aspirations, currently play on a team. But then he takes and he wins the money. And this was back in the days where I don't know about in the rest of the world, but the game show, you won money and then you actually had to take the money and quote unquote spend it on prizes that they would show you. And Zach bought a go-kart with the money that he won, and he spent almost the entire sum of money on buying himself a go-kart, which is what got him into racing.
No kidding.
And if it not for this go-kart,
yeah,
would we have ever seen Zach Brown? It could have completely changed the entire trajectory of Zach Brown's future, and to a greater degree, how much would it have affected McLaren's fortunes?
No doubt
had
about
Zach
it.
not decided to go the racing route?
Well, think about it all the way through. Norris, where would he be? Him and Zach Brown have been really close ever since Norris was really almost since he first started racing. Where would he be? He probably wouldn't be at McLaren. He'd probably be somewhere else. He's at McLaren because of his loyalty to Zach.
Yes, absolutely. So fun stuff.
Yeah, that's cool.
All right, so let's move on to Stump the Pundit. So now it's time for Corey to try to noodle up my brain. And so Corey will have a trivia question for me. So Corey, what do you have for me this week?
I have a couple. So I'm transitioning away from drivers for the moment, at least. Got a couple of just general F1 questions for you. What year did Formula One take place?
The very first, 1950.
First. Yes, that's correct. Which circuit has the most Formula One races?
It's going to be one of the two. It's either going to be Silverstone or Belgium, and I'm going to go with Spa because of the years where Silverstone and Brands Hatch alternated and everything. So I'm going to go with Spa.
Monaco, actually.
Really? Yes, you're right. I didn't even think about that, but you are correct that Monaco has appeared every year of the Formula One World Championship, because there was even a couple years where Spa wasn't on the calendar. So yes, you are correct.
I'm laughing at this one, but I'm going to ask it, but I mean, I'm laughing because I know you already know it, but which team has the most constructors championship wins in Formula One?
That would be Ferrari.
Yeah. Hands down, Ferrari.
Yes. And like we talked about before, another time that you asked me a trivia question, I think it was about the most wins by a team.
Yeah.
And I had said Ferrari. It's only because, again, like Monaco, Ferrari has participated in F1 in every single year since its birth. So just by virtue of being the old timer in the series, it kind of lends them to have the most wins, constructors championships, and everything else. So,
all right. Last one. What is the highest number of consecutive world championships won by a driver, or who? Yeah.
Michael Schumacher.
Yeah.
Because he won 5 in a row at Ferrari.
He's tied with Juan Manuel Fangio and Michael Schumacher. They both hold 5 each in a row.
Yes, you're correct. Because Fangio missed out on it in 50, and then he was champion from 51 through 56.
Yep, that's right.
Yep.
All right. That's it.
All right, cool. All right, so real quick, let's take and preview the Australian Grand Prix. So the circus returns to the streets of Albert Park this weekend. First of all, let's talk about who do we think is going to have a very strong showing?
Obviously, Red Bull.
Red Bull should have a really good weekend this weekend.
Yep.
More than likely, we'll take and probably have another 1-2, but I'm hoping that with Ferrari being able to close the gap as well as they did at Jeddah last week, and also because Australia is a track that I think will suit Ferrari very well. I'm kind of hoping that Ferrari can take the fight to them this weekend. I think that they will go very well.
With that being said, I'm thinking that Mercedes is going to do well. I know that we weren't talking very nicely about Danny Rick, but home race,
yes,
he's got to do well. He's got to pull it out. What do you think?
I totally agree. He's always done very well
Yeah,
at his
he
home
has.
race. His very first race in Formula One, he scored points. He has always gone very, very well at Australia. If he's going to pull one out, this is the weekend to do it. So, providing Racing Bulls gives him a really strong car, he should go very well this weekend.
Yep. Totally agree.
So, who do we think is going to struggle this weekend?
Alpine.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think that they did show a little bit better form at Jeddah, but I think this is going to be another weekend where they're going to have a very rough go of it. I also think that Haas will take a little bit of a step backwards this weekend, and I
Okay.
don't think that the streets at Albert Park, because it's not going to have the grip levels like Jeddah and Bahrain had, that I think that they're going to take a step back. I don't think Sauber's going to look very good this weekend. I
Sauber.
think they're going to be fighting for the bottom of the grid this weekend. I think track that I don't think is going to suit the Sauber very well either.
What do you think about Williams?
I think their last weekend was kind of an outlier in the fact that they had some struggles, but I think that had more to do with mechanical gremlins and things like that. That I think with the extra week, I think that they're going to have a lot of that sorted out. And I definitely think that one, if not maybe both of the Williams might be in the points this weekend if everything comes together. So who do you think will be a surprise this weekend?
Maybe Aston.
Yeah.
Alonso does well on this track, so maybe he could be up there. Maybe podium.
I
Fingers
think
crossed.
that yes. But my thought is I'm thinking that, especially because after his improved form this year, staying with the Aston Martin theme, I think that Lance Stroll will have a very good weekend. I think he's going to have a lot to prove after the disaster of the last race in Saudi Arabia. He's going to have a lot to prove, and I think that he's going to make the best of the weekend. So I think that Lance Stroll is going to be, a surprise for this weekend.
I like that one. Yeah.
Lance has responded very, very well to the tweaks to this year's car. I think it was just one of those weird things about street circuits that just out of nowhere, they'll jump up and bite you. And I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Max Verstappen or if you're Nicholas Latifi. There's always going to be one time a street race is going to bite you. And look at Verstappen at Azerbaijan 2021, where the tires let go and put Max into the wall. Street circuits bite even the best of drivers. Your predictions for this weekend?
Definitely Red Bull up top, 1-2, I would say, because as we all know, Checo's, he has that question mark above him. So he has to race like his life depends on it, because quite frankly, his F1 career does depend on it. If Red Bull chooses to part ways, there's not many people that are going to take him at this point. There's so many other drivers on the grid now that there's too much of an open market. Last year, maybe the year before, there's some open spots, but now it's going to be pretty difficult for him to find a seat. So definitely 1-2 for Red Bull. McLaren, I think, is going to do really well. Ferrari is going to be up there. I'd say, if not podium, very close to it. Mercedes, I think Mercedes is probably going to be that. Hamilton will be 4th, 5th, maybe. As performed so far, will be either one behind him or one ahead of him. One surprise. I think Tsunoda is going to do well. Until the rest of the year, I think that we're going to see a different Yuki. I think that he's really starting to see that he really does have it. He's starting to get more faith in himself. And I think that he's going to do well this year. Well, this year in general, but this race in Australia, I think he would do very well. What about you?
Yeah, I think I'm like you. I think Yuki will be another one of the surprises. Okay, so my predictions for this weekend. First of all, I do predict that Max will win the race. But I'm going to throw a curveball here. I'm going to say Leclerc is going to come home second. Okay. So I think that Ferrari is going to take another chunk out of Red Bull's lead. So I'm going to say it's going to be Verstappen and Leclerc will be within 8 to 10 seconds behind Verstappen at the end. Sainz will come home third.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I'm going to say that the Mercedes is going to come home 4th and 5th with either Hamilton or Russell in either of those positions. So that's kind of my prediction for the top 5 for this weekend.
Right on. Okay, cool. Love it.
All right, then. So should we wrap it up?
All good. I think we're ready.
We are previewed out for this week's edition of F1 Brake Check. Join Corey and I next week when we break down all the events from the Outback and beyond. We'll have our history lesson on the Aussie Grand Prix. Our Tech Corner will feature an all-new subject, and Corey will once again try to stump yours truly. Until then, he's Corey, I'm Scott. We are the pundits of F1 Brake Check. Let's go!
Thank you for listening to F1 Brake Check. If you have enjoyed what you heard, don't miss a single episode by hitting that subscribe button in your favorite podcatcher, or you can watch the video version on YouTube. Help us grow by sharing us with your friends and fellow F1 fans. You can contact us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, TikTok and X at F1 Brake Check. Our website is f1brakecheck.com, where you will find links to all our content. We value your passion and your feedback, so please take a moment to review our podcast. Your reviews help us grow and improve, and it means the world to us. Share your thoughts, rate us, and let us know how we can make the show experience even better. F1 Brake Check is a production of Brake Check Media. For your hosts Scott Vick and Corey Broom, until next time, keep yourself inside track limits, and try not to pitch it in the kitty litter.